back to the Real Recovery Show. Today's episode is going to be a little bit about relationships, a little bit about using things, people, drugs, everything to make ourselves feel better from a cool little angle that we were talking about. So I'm excited about this episode. So I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, in my family, we had a certain kind of way that we related where we were always, it was a very transactional thing. Like, remember that Janet Jackson song, what have you done for me lately? Well, that was the theme song of my childhood. If I asked my mom to do anything for me, it was, okay, well, what are you going to do for me? And I learned at a very early age that, to do things for people, you do things because you want to invest in them so that you can get stuff, So they owe you. And so everything was always on, I'm going to do for you so I can get something, but nobody was ever clued in on what my expectations were. So then I would have big fat resentments because they didn't do the thing, right? And of course I wasn't listening to my intuition, so I would martyr and I would people please. And I thought I was such a good person, but really my motives were all to get, giving to get. And then it wasn't just in that way too. I saw my parents, why they stayed together, and they stayed together for reasons, not because they really felt like it was making them happy, which it wasn't. And so, there was just a lot of inherent idea about that. And then, my dad cheated on my mom, and so I learned how people were using people to make them feel better. My mom staying with my dad, etc. But me, I grew up believing that if I am beautiful enough and giving enough, that I won't be alone. If I can help you, and you need me, or you want me, then you won't leave me. And I even knew that. I consciously knew that, but I didn't even think there was anything wrong with it. I thought that's the way the world worked. You just had to figure out your niche, and how you were going to make sure you got what you wanted, protected yourself, and were able to live in this world successfully. But it wasn't until crashing and burning so many times this behavior. So I'll say this, when we first get into recovery, if it's alcohol or drugs or food or anything super egregious that we get into recovery for, we could think so much it's just the behavior around the substance or whatever that's been causing us to have such an unmanageable life. But it was actually the thinking, the transactional relationships, the keeping everybody at an arm's distance, the self-seeking, the selfishness that was really at the root of all the troubles, and then being uncomfortable in our own skin, we would seek alcohol or drugs or whatever, but we would also seek people. Even doing alcohol and drugs to be with people that we only see them as a means to an end. Sex, like being with somebody for the hit of it, or even flirting with somebody when you're already in a relationship, or cheating on somebody because you feel like you need something that you're not going to be able to get because maybe something's not going right in the relationship or whatever. But it's still this idea, that I'll say this last thing, and then I'll introduce our first guest. One of my favorite lines I heard somebody say once was that they didn't stop until they ran out of people, and she said she loved things and used people. And I love that, and now today she loves people and uses things, which is the right headspace, to come from a perspective like that. But I was always evaluating every single interaction as to what's in it for me, and then people were so disposable, because if I felt like there was nothing there for me, then there's no point, and then I would just kick them out of my life, or just be like, whatever. But if they felt like there was one thing, that was so my thing, whatever it was that I was getting from somebody, it doesn't matter if everything else is a train wreck. I will stay because of the one thing that I believe I need, that I'm getting, even though everything else is whatever. And for me, that showed me sometimes it was the way it was, sometimes it was sex, that would keep me in even a dysfunctional relationship, because I never wanted to be without that form, the way it was, of intimacy, of sexual intimacy. So yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, so we've had conversations about this in one way or another, and I'm so excited to have Ryan on the show. He's 4 years in recovery.
Coming up on 4 years.
Up on 4 years.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And you've been a part of that journey, and you've seen me go through, everything. And I use people, places, and things because I struggle with feelings, and I grew up in a very sterile environment. Like, my parents really never demonstrated affection. And maybe they did, but I just couldn't see it. Because, my vision can complicate reality. That's part of my problem. I love to interpret things. I have my own perspective on things. So I don't want to blame this on anyone. I made a lot of choices in my life that got me to where I am at today. And I'm so grateful for those choices today. But, my story started out, I grew up in Utah, beautiful state, but as a gay Catholic boy, a lot of shame and guilt and just feeling different, and it all started in college. I remember, I didn't drink or use until 16 was the first time I drank, and it was at my cousin's wedding in Michigan. I had flown home, and I was really nervous and anxious because I thought everybody knew, that they could tell I was gay, and I wasn't yet comfortable to say I was gay. And it ended up I just had this sense of relief after I took that drink. I could finally stop playing the role I thought everybody wanted me to play. And I've been chasing that moment ever since. And my disease is progressive, right? It starts out with just drinks, and then it becomes how else can I change the way I feel?
When you first started drinking, and you're tying it into whether or not you're out, right? When you first started drinking, did you care? Did you still protect that secret, or did you not care anymore if people knew?
I think it was a lack of caring, because I was so tight, right? I was wound tight. And so that drink allowed me to just be I'm who I am. I'm the life of the party. I could make people laugh. So now people, if they know, they know. Yeah.
So when you would, after you would drink and then you would come to, right? I mean, I don't know, were you a blackout drinker? I don't know.
I wasn't a blackout drinker. I remember.
But maybe the next day, do you say, wow, I can't believe, okay, people now know, or did it help you to come out more?
I wouldn't say. I think it just helped me feel comfortable. I wasn't ready to come out at that point yet. You'd have to wait until I was 20, and it was on President's Day, ironically. I went to my brothers and his wives and, told them in person, but I called my parents on the phone. Because, again, I want to manage.
Did they know already?
I'm sure they did. I mean, I sang Don't Cry For Me Argentina at my musical audition. There was definitely a lot of, if Glee was filmed when I was in high school, I definitely would have been very noticeable.
Yeah.
And I say that with a little bit of jealousy, how people can live today. But also a lot of joy that I was just kind of who I was. I was singing show tunes that were written for females, but still believing nobody knew I was gay.
Yeah.
And now, ironically, a lot of people I went to high school with, a lot of them are on the same journey. There's so many of them that I know suffered from, drinking or using or changing the way they felt in many different ways. And we're all gay. And it's what if we could have just told each other in that moment? How much healing could have how much of that could that have cut off of the pain that I've gone through up to this point?
I feel like if you took out the gay and you just said, everything else you just said, I feel like you speak for every alcoholic, every addict. What if we could have just been ourselves?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that the whole reason why we were drinking and doing drugs, was because on some level we felt like being who we thought we needed to be was too much?
It's too much. That's when my life is really unbearable. Right? Because I'm too busy playing roles that I think people want me to play. So I'm who am I today? And I remember I was a yoga teacher, and one of the fellow yoga teachers asked me, this was before I got sober a few years, she's like, Ryan, well, who are you? And when she asked me this, I got really angry.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea who I was, and then I
Right.
felt so inept, right? Like part of my journey was always feeling less than and unworthy of like meaningful love and relationships. So, you know, I didn't drink again until I was like 21. And I started going to gay clubs, and I would see, you know, I would compare myself to other people. That's part of my disease, right? I'm going to compare my outsides to their outsides. And
Your insides.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's hard because I'm always so hard on myself, but I'm giving everybody else grace that I wouldn't give to myself. And again, that drink just helped me like feel at ease, right? And then it moved to like ecstasy and all the things that you do in college, or at least I did in college. And then I took like a 10-year break, but I was in a very dysfunctional, codependent relationship. And again, not blaming that person because I chose to be there, right? It takes two to dance, and I was dancing.
Yeah.
And I ended up becoming a parent in that relationship. But how could I escape without using drugs? And I found apps, and I found people, and I found ways to distract myself. And, you know, I used to just say, oh, I'm just a regular, everyday gay guy. I have, you know, a high sex drive. Like, we weren't in an open relationship. I was just lying. So that's part of my disease.
Yeah.
Like, I lie. You know, I want to get what I want when I want to get it. And I couldn't even tell myself the truth. And probably one of the hardest moments in that relationship was showing up to his birthday party with an obvious like hickey on my neck. Because again, I had no respect for my relationship, you know, because I would use that resentment to justify the behavior.
Do you feel that, because the road gets narrower, right? So like sometimes, you know, somebody will stop one behavior and they don't even know they have to really stop these other behaviors, but the stopping of the one behavior makes the other behaviors have to start being looked at because they all kind of support each other. Like I know like when I was smoking a lot of pot, for example, you know, like I was able to like do things that if I wasn't smoking morning, noon, and night pot during that little period of my life, I couldn't have let that be accepted by myself. Do you know what I mean? And so when you stop drinking or doing drugs, right? When you stop doing that, also you have to be like, oh, well, I can't really do this other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, other than the fact that, of course, honesty is one of the key tenets of recovery.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, doing inventories and finding out, oh, this is where I was wrong, this is where I was wrong, this is where I was wrong. It's like other addictive behaviors go, hey, I want to look at me now.
It's like whack-a-mole, right?
Yeah.
I get one under control and then something else pops up. And like, I'm still on this journey of healing and figuring out like the next best right action to take. And for me, the root addiction that I had was really changing the way I felt by any means. And it was people. You know, I was going to please that person. I was going to make them feel better. I was going to sacrifice myself at their altar because I'd rather them feel good, because I want to reiterate that, like, I'm a piece of, you know, and I don't deserve this happiness. But today, by working those foundational, you know, processes, that journey, it's so good.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't a straight road.
No.
As you know, like I kept placing my hand on that hot stove, burning myself over and over and over. And I had to go to 2 treatment centers. And one was specifically for, you know, gay men that had like co-occurring addictions. So what I love about that program was it really...
What program is that?
So I went to Breathe Healing Life Center. It's in West Hollywood.
Okay.
And their whole idea is like helping gay men learn how to be intimate. And when I say intimate, I just don't mean sexually, right?
For sure.
I mean friendships.
Yeah.
Because for me, I would always value someone as like, do I want to have sex with them? Or do I feel like they're too busy judging me to even have a relationship with me? Because there's so much body image and, you know, people became, to me, almost like a commodity. Like they were, I could order off a menu.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
that was manufacturing that intimacy that I always desired. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, it became never enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would need more and more and more and more. And it became where I needed to use other substances to give me the ability to, you know, be the life of the party and connect with people.
Mm.
And like really do things that I never would have done if I wasn't on that substance.
Mm-hmm.
Like manufacturing this false idea of like, oh, I'm so free. No, I'm not free. Like I'm chained to this disease.
Right.
And, you know, I left that treatment center and I didn't stay sober.
That sounds like such a fascinating place.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. They work on like food, they work on relationships, they work on drugs, and you know,
but all tying into
together.
Too.
Yeah, and like
I love that.
The thing was, so there's a lot of like gay men that use like crystal meth, you know, and I use cocaine. I love stimulants. Like I'm just a naturally kind of low key person. I always say I was a cat in a past life because I love naps. I'm like so mellow.
I can see being a cat in a past life.
So I want to amp it up, right? Like I don't like downers. So I ended up turning to that because I'm chasing my youth. I had this Peter Pan syndrome too. And it just became more and more complicated. And they gave me the tools. They taught me like how to be a good friend to other people. And how to really practice honesty and vulnerability. And I get to see that now in the community that I'm at here where we live, is really that honesty and that vulnerability and like telling people the truth.
Yeah.
And so I left there, you know, I came back out right before COVID. I'm always like, if I would have known COVID was going to happen, I just would have stayed there. Because they were like, please stay. And I was like, no, I need to get back to work. I need to do all this. Like, that's the delusion, right? Like, I now know today that if I'm not in recovery, that nothing else matters. Like, everything else is going to go down the drain. And so it's 6/15 of 20 is my recovery date. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm so grateful for all the times that thank God that revolving door never shut on me. Because I've had people die.
Oh yeah.
And it's hard.
Me too.
And
so many people.
Yeah. One of them was this great guy. His name was Chad. Barely knew him. I look at him as an angel now because I remember him telling me, like, Ryan, like, you're never going to meet anybody just sitting on your couch. And so...
you can. If
I
you have
can,
apps.
but not the right yes. And I did use an app to meet somebody, but it was more about like putting yourself out there, right? Like the right guy's not going to come into your life unless you make an effort. That's part of my disease. I just want things to come to me because I'm entitled.
I don't know. I feel like we can also make too much of an effort.
Yeah.
Because for me, I definitely put way too much effort, and then finally was told for the 1000th time you have to be willing to be alone, and then I was finally willing to be alone legitimately, and then but you're in a relationship now, right?
Yeah, so
how has recovery helped you with that?
Oh my gosh. Well,
'Cause
first
he's a
of
really
all,
nice guy.
he's so sweet.
He is sweet.
He's so sweet, and his name's Gio, and like he's such a gift to my life. He's teaching me a lot.
Yeah.
And what I had to first learn was how to be intimate without drugs. Awkward.
I went through that too.
It was such a journey, and thank God for his patience. Because for me, like, growing up Catholic and gay in Utah, like, there was a lot of guilt and shame after, you know, sex was something that was used just to, like, procreate. There was no joy in it. At least that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Growing up. Again, my lenses
Not
are my lenses.
supposed to have joy, and if you have joy, then there's something wrong.
Yeah. And so he is not a person in recovery. He's never struggled with any of these things that I struggle with. And it's just so joyful. It's not perfect. Like, we still fight. I still want to throw fits like a 12-year-old, and like, but we work through it. I have been given the ability to communicate. And when I struggle, I call friends, right? And I tell them myself, and I say, hey, like, I'm being a child today. And they always tell me, why don't you pick up the phone and call someone else and ask them how they're doing, rather than calling me and complaining about the way you feel today. And those are the tools that have been, like, laid at my feet, right? And it's such a gift, and I've
seen such a change in you over 4
thank you.
years. It's pretty phenomenal. Like, your whole energy, the way you, because I remember, because when I met you, you had a little bit and then you relapsed,
Yeah.
right? And so your whole energy back then, you were very anxious.
Yeah.
Very anxious. And I remember you doing the yoga thing, and then we were going to do the whole yoga thing over at the meeting space. We were trying to plan that, and it's like herding cats. And but you were so like you had so much nervous energy, you know. And then seeing you over the years, you just became more and more comfortable in your own skin. Like you could just see it, you know. And even the way you shared changed. You know, and even now, like, I was just like, I am listening to it, but I'm also watching you, and I'm just like, God.
Yeah, it's such a, like, the transformation is subtle to us as we go through it, right?
But for people who see you,
it's more profound for us.
It is profound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just wouldn't change anything today.
Yeah.
And I really had to, like, for me, I had to decouple using people and drugs, and then learning how I could be intimate, friendship, sexually, you know, any type of intimacy with someone without manufacturing it through the use of substances. And
would you say it's also like an addiction to attention?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like a hit.
Because
it's
I never
an energy.
because I never felt seen, right? So I'm going to use as many people to validate me.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I felt very invisible growing up, and I feel like when somebody like notices you or interacts with you in such a way where they're like, "Oh, I see you," and you're like, "Yeah, you do," you know, and then it's like I'm smiling because like it's a hit. It's a hit that you get, and that you seek, you know. And if we're not careful, if we're not coming from a recovery headspace or our intuition, we could be already starting the process of just wanting, I just want to hit. I just want to check out. Let me just have this. Let me just flirt. Let me just whatever, when it might be inappropriate to do so.
Yeah, and I can still use like shopping, debt, spending. Like I'm a dopamine fiend. Like I want my hit no matter what. But you know, I have some bottom line behaviors today that I won't engage in, and those involve people, places, and things.
What are your bottom lines?
So like I'm not going to download hookup sites, right?
Okay.
I'm not going to have transactional relationships today.
Because you're in a relationship.
Because I'm in a relationship.
But if you weren't in a relationship, not saying you.
Yeah.
But would you? How would you meet people?
Yeah, I think for me, apps are not a safe place. Just they trigger a lot of other behaviors. They're triggering for me, right? So if I wasn't in a relationship,
the quick connection, the quick fix,
it's easy. It's like a
superficial.
Menu. Yeah, it's like those are not people anymore.
Yeah.
They're just goods that I want to order off of an app. And so, you know, part of my recovery journey was I started a gay and lesbian book club here in town.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I used to complain. I used to think like, oh, I need to move to West Hollywood because there's not a gay book club here. And it was like one day I caught myself and it's like, well, then why don't you start one? So we've been meeting every month since March of 2020.
Oh, wow.
And like, it's a small group. It's usually me with a bunch of women, and every so often another guy will show up. But like, it's such a great community. So I know today that even if I wasn't in a loving relationship, like I put the foundation of community in my life, and that's how I'll meet people.
Yeah.
And I hope I don't have to meet anybody, but I know too, like, everything changes. Right? Like, that's part of life, you know? My dad, I think, suffers from some of these using people, places, and things, too. He didn't do drugs or any of that, but he recently left my mom 75 years into marriage for a younger affair partner, like last...
What do you mean 75 years?
Not 75. They're 75 years old, but been together like 50 years.
Jeez.
Yeah, through no. And
so
like,
he's 75 years
old.
old.
Yeah, and he's in a relationship with like a mid-30-year-old. And again, like, I can't judge anyone else's behavior, and I'm not judging his behavior.
But he might be looking for something.
Yeah, like we're all looking for something, you know. And I know that he's on his own journey. And what I've been given is the gift of allowing people to be on their journey.
I kind of feel like the whole using people, some of it's very learned behavior of habit, and so we just don't know. And some of it is almost the equivalent of going shopping for food hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll buy things that are not necessarily what you would eat if you were balanced and taking care of yourself, right? Like if you're starving,
Yeah.
walking around the store, you might want something that's not good for you. I kind of feel like, when we starve in intimately, we don't let anybody in, we're not comfortable in our own skin, we're checking out, and we're, guarding up, and it's all smoke and mirrors, we're not showing people, what we really think and what we really feel, that we starve.
Mm-hmm.
We starve, and then we cling to, we want something, we're looking for something to because we're starving, I feel like that's one of the reasons why even people cheat in relationships, is that even though they physically have a person that's
Mm-hmm.
there, there's something going on that they're starving.
Yeah. And I think
starving.
what I do have is like an intimacy disorder, right? Like in many ways when it comes to using people. Because again, I didn't know how to relate to
An
anyone.
intimacy disorder.
Yeah, like that's just something, it's not my own. Like,
No.
I've stolen it from someone else,
Yeah.
I'm sure. But like, I can identify that with
Mm-hmm.
that today. It's truly been, I could never get enough of anything. And today I have more than enough.
I cut you off earlier. So what are your bottom lines? One of them is dating apps.
Yeah, dating apps, transactional, using people. For me, sex became, again, ordering off of a menu. So I would find a certain type of person, and then I would manufacture the situation by controlling it, by saying, this is what I'm going to do, this is what you're going to do. Again, really the director. If people would only do what I tell them to do, my life would be a lot better.
Interesting.
And today,
So
I
would
still
you attract people who would want you to take charge?
Oh,
and tell
yeah,
them what to do?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even if they didn't, there would be some type of hook that would make them want to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And
even your whole mannerism, you're like, oh yeah.
so it's just good not to be in that place. And using drugs, obviously. And then lying. It's really, I still struggle with, am I telling the truth? And you talked about something earlier, and that's intuition.
Yeah.
And recognizing that small voice that whispers, hey, don't go there.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe that's not a good idea. Or are you sure you want to do that? Because when I was in my disease, all I did was listen to the voice that was screaming. Because that's all I had the ability to hear. Because again, I didn't believe I was being heard, so I was also screaming.
Mm-hmm.
And so today I'm grateful that I found that subtle voice, that I now know, the universe is always guiding me as long as I choose to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I'm not reactive in life, I can be responsive, right? But when I'm reacting, it's usually because I'm in fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to replace fear with faith. And I need to give myself the grace that I'm willing to give to everybody else. Because people have, and that's what my program of recovery has taught me, is to give people grace. Because that grace was shown to me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so many paths of recovery today. Yoga is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Breath work is one of them. I found a group of friends that are on a similar journey. That's one of them. And I wouldn't change one moment in my life. I truly believe I'm here to learn how to live a life without drugs and without using people, without using places, and hopefully one day I'll get the shopping and the dopamine. And, it's not perfection today. It's really practicing and allowing myself, what did I do well today? The first step is I didn't use people, places, and things. The second step is I didn't harm anyone, especially myself. And the third is I found a higher power that's given me the grace to walk through every situation that comes my way, as long as I'm willing to offer it up to that universe, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just grateful.
That's great.
Yeah.
I feel like for me the main piece of whether or not I'm going to be self-seeking and see somebody as only a means to an end is whether or not I'm surrendering, turning things over, and letting my higher power, God, whatever you want to call it, through my intuition, tell me what the next right step is. When I'm just doing, okay, does this feel like the next right step? I'm more focused on that than whether or not, like, people can come and go very freely in my life when I haven't decided, oh my God, they're good for this. I can't, I could still, because I run a business, I could still think, oh, but they would be good for, okay, I don't know what my highest good looks like, because, So thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Any last minute words of wisdom you want to share? Anybody who might be struggling with codependency, sex addiction, drugs, alcohol, being gay, anything?
Yeah, I just, there is light at the end of the road as long as you continue, and I pray that you can continue walking down that road, because unfortunately people die. And those are my angels today. And I'm grateful for the struggles. I'm grateful for the small victories, and sometimes that's just getting out of bed and placing my feet on the ground, because there's many people that haven't been able to do that. And if you're in the grips of your addiction, like, I get it. I wanted to walk away and think like, oh, this isn't going to work for me. And there's people like yourself and Paul, and just people in this world that have given me so many lessons because I chose to listen. So I hope today you'll choose to listen more than speak. And I hope you'll choose to surrender rather than fight. And I hope you'll choose to just give yourself the grace that you deserve, because we all deserve that.
It's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to go to a quick break, but please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them, and do not replace your own intuition or professional medical advice, and are not representing any 12-step program. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come right back. Thank you. The Meeting Space is a facility with over 100 weekly recovery meetings for addiction from alcohol, drugs, sex, food, gambling, codependency, and PTSD. When someone is scared to go to their first meeting, we walk them through the process, ask them and answer questions to assuage their concerns. Many are court-ordered to attend, and we provide free court papers and teach them the process. Our glass-enclosed, soundproof children's playroom enables parents to be in a meeting while watching their children. We have healing workshops, craft fairs, and special authors who come to teach and sit with our fellowships. During COVID, we were declared an essential business by the County Commissioner's Office. We were kept open so that we can continue our daily work with traumatized chronic relapsers and those who would have used alcohol or drugs in isolation. Local businesses rent our space as well to financially help with this mission, and they get to have a great location for their business meeting or training. The recovery store in the center of our facility provides literature, clothing, medallions, and custom gifts to encourage, aid in, and celebrate a person's recovery from alcohol, drugs, PTSD, or unhealthy behaviors. Both the recovery store and the meeting space are open every day, including holidays. Saving lives, educating the community, reducing social stigma, providing a safe place for people to heal. Our nonprofit is supported entirely by donations by people like you who want everyone to have a place to go to heal. Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. Just so you know, there are lots of programs, and not just there's rehabs, there's counselors, there's groups, but at the meeting space for all the different things that we're talking about today, there's Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, which is SLAA. There's Sex Addicts Anonymous. There's CODA, which is Codependency Anonymous. And then Adult Children of Alcoholics for people who grew up in dysfunction, militarism, addiction, tend to breed people, those families tend to breed people who are codependent, self-abandoning, and either codependent and or addicted. as well as, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous and then the food addictions, all those programs as well. There's even one for spending, called Debtors Anonymous, and they even have a branch to it for under-earning, which is pretty cool, as a program as well. They have some really good literature. I read some of it, and so like there's different ways in which this the using of people, places, and things, like Ryan was talking about, come out, and then there are different ways that, and that's just within that, those kinds of programs, but there's also tons of books, there's other outpatient, inpatient, there's therapists, there's groups, there's Celebrate Recovery. There's so many different ways that a person can be in recovery, and we can do everything, we can avail ourselves of all the different tools to heal and just get better. So anyway, now we're joined with Paul, who has been in recovery for
over 8 years now.
Okay, and for codependency, you had an experience where you were in a relationship, and so tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. When I first became sexually active at 15 years old, and I got a little taste of that, it was chase, non-stop. And going into that, I almost describe it as a first date. I'm excited, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. And it wasn't reality. It was what I envisaged was going to happen. And once the physical side happened, it was almost like, okay, I'm done, I'm released. Was not interested in that person. And it wasn't really what I would have chosen how to respond to that person. It was just a natural instinct. And that went on for probably 2 or 3 years, and it taught me an absolute lie, which meant that I was never ever going to be interested in a female. Ever. And then fortunately that went on, and I met some wonderful people, but when I think back now and look at it, it makes me cringe. It was almost like being two people. So it was me going in, all right, with flowers and chocolates, and it wasn't flowers and chocolates, but it was saying whatever it needed to be. Right. It was vocabulary that would look and sound like that.
It's a chemical experience. The whole courting and the fantasy, the flirting, the dating, the energy, the build-up, and then you go and you have the experience, the sex, and then there's just this release, and then it's like chemically we are two different people before and after, when we're not in a committed, intimate relationship with somebody where there are other things, because we're able at the moment to be intimate on other levels, right? So if it's, this is why I was like this double-edged sword. I loved the high of the cat and mouse experience of that, and then I hated the crash after. I hated that feeling. I actually would feel like I would feel this joining, which was a superficial, fake, fantasy type energy, right? And then I would feel like this struck sober experience after, and if we don't know what's going on, we just think, wrong person, and they just need to find another person, or we get to a place where we're like, oh shit, I'm the common denominator. Yeah. I'm incapable of having a relationship.
Yeah, and just replace that down feeling with the next. Unfortunately, I don't know how or why it happened, but doing that for probably 2 to 3 years, I met someone in an environment. So I'm a gymnast by trade, retired a long time ago, and I met someone in a gymnastics competition. And when I saw her, she just had a normal tracksuit, wasn't attracted to her at all. She led her team, and then there was some celebration at night, and she was about 18 months older than me, and she was in the competition as a coach with another gentleman that I presumed, and I knew him from when I was a real tiny little kid. He was one of the older gymnasts, so just already, that's her boyfriend, and the levels that she was unapproachable, and that was it. And then at that celebration, which we call a disco 30, 40 years ago, right? She walked in, she wasn't in a tracksuit, you know, she was in this
And you're
beautiful
like, whoa.
woolen, short mini dress, woolen green. And my jaw must have dropped. I was like, oh my God, you know, and it was like the forbidden fruit. There's no chance that I would ever be able to, you know, get with that lady. Anyway, the beauty of that was...
How interesting.
The beauty of it was I wasn't at that gym. It was just a competition. She ended up coming to the gym that I trained at twice a week, and it was called, and it's not what it sounds like, it's adult classes, which is adult gymnastics classes.
Right.
So, you know, anybody, then, you know, just for fun.
Right.
And then part of that, because I was quite high level at gymnastics, I would help coach and teach them. So my session finished at 9 and they continued till 10 or 10:30. So we just got to know each other, just chatting, and that was it. For about 3 months, and then Christmas came, the gym was going to close, and she said to me, well, I won't see you for a couple of weeks, would you give me your phone number? And I said, yeah. And we went out on a date. I was broke, so I was on the equivalent of £25 $40 to last me every 2 weeks. I was unemployed. That's how I funded my gymnastics career at the early age. And she had a good job, she had a car, she had, you know, I was like, oof, you know. And she picked me up, and I offered to pay for the meal, which was $25, including the tip. We both had steak meals. And we were inseparable after that night. So we were dating, and but the biggest problem was I was afraid to be intimate. So I think we kissed and canoodled, and that was about it. And I remember
Canoodled.
Yeah, canoodled. I don't know if I made that up, but it sounds good, doesn't it? But I remember lying down on the sofa or her bed at her parents' house. I'd come from a really hard gymnastics session. I was nodding off, and I remember her tapping me on the shoulder saying, "Paul," and I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "Are you not attracted to me?" And I just opened up and I said, "I am." And I said, "The truth is that I love you, but I'm afraid to be intimate." And then I told her the story, and I married that lady. It was an excellent, you know, relationship. It ran its course. We're still best friends. She's in England. We'd probably...
When you were afraid to be intimate, you were afraid you were going to turn off. You're afraid you were going to
the
feel
moment,
anything anymore.
The moment the physical attraction, the moment basically the moment we slept together, and I used to refer to it as my poison was released.
Right.
I was never going to be,
yes.
and that's why I was afraid.
I totally understand this.
And I was so scared.
I had the feeling, I had two things that this brings up for me. I had the fear that after having sex with somebody, that switch would go off, and that whatever it is that we were experiencing that was so yummy would be gone. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was, if we were to get into a committed relationship where I'm like, you're my boyfriend, I'm your girlfriend, we're doing this thing, I had something that would happen then that was very similar to that, where I would be like, I would switch off. It's kind of like what Ryan was talking about when he was on the apps. I was like, oh, but there's somebody else. Oh, but there's somebody else. Oh, but there's somebody else. Am I sure that, I would think, am I sure? Because to me, this all or nothing black or white head of mine would say, this is marriage. Even though it was a relationship, even though it was boyfriend and girlfriend, to me it was a commitment, and it would be too much, and I would shut off. It's the same way after.
So
yeah,
that's really interesting for me to hear that from the female perspective, because I didn't know that existed on the female side. And when
welcome.
you talk to guys, it's thank you.
Yeah.
However, that was the fear.
Yeah.
And it was a complete lie.
Yeah.
Because what I'd built up over 4 months is
a real intimacy.
A real intimacy with this wonderful
but
lady.
Maybe, Paul, it was good that you had that
Before.
fear, because
Absolutely.
it made you not have sex right away, and
Absolutely.
it made you have that intimacy with her,
100%.
so that when you finally did,
Yeah, 100%.
you were safer
I agree.
to do it.
Yeah, and thank God it was her, and thank God I had utmost respect. She was 18 months older than me.
Mm-hmm.
She was an adult. I was just this cheeky little gymnast trying to
18
win.
months older.
Yeah, but it felt massive because she was like, I didn't have a job. Right? I think I might have had a car, but it was $150.
She acted like an adult more than you.
Everybody does now, right? That's no surprise. But I'm really grateful for that. And actually, she sent me a thing on an app, Facebook, and it was a picture, and it was us when I was 18. With all the friends that we wrote, and I looked, I couldn't even find myself, and there I was in the corner, And then I said, oh my goodness, you know, and she said, it's like a Friends, you know, the series Friends. It's like a Friends picture. But it was amazing. And it was nice to see. And I understood it then. I understood why. And I'm glad I was able to be honest and say that to her. And I'm glad that she was able to ask and not force the issue. But she's a great friend of mine. You know, I'm in touch with her probably once a month, and I'll see. I'm going to England next month actually for gymnastics celebration. There's a big anniversary over there. But it was very, very strange for me, you know, to think. And then it made me realise that I wasn't that monster.
How long were you together?
I would say, people ask me this, but I'm on another marriage now and everything. So it was 40 years ago. So I think we were probably together about 11 years, something like that.
And why'd you break up?
We just ran its course, yeah. We became, I can honestly say, we didn't have one argument. We ended up like brother and sister.
Yeah.
And I had to travel the world for my sport. So no matter what happened, and that was a big transition. So I was the guy that actually, you know, I chased females, I didn't care and everything. And when I was on these gymnastics trips before her, I was the same thing. But with her, I couldn't wait to get back from the competition. I bought her gifts and thought about her all the time. And I mean, there wasn't that communication from Australia, Thailand, wherever it was that we were competing, like it is today. You know, I didn't even have a cell phone until I was about 23, I don't think. So really, really missed her.
So it wasn't an issue. And then when you guys got divorced and you went back to dating.
Yeah, I mean, and then I'm trying to think. There was. And then I joined Cirque du Soleil after that. So then I travelled Europe. I was a single man, and it was amazing. But again, it wasn't real.
With all those acrobatics.
Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't so much that. It was more. I was travelling to different countries and cities around Europe, and it was almost like being mini famous. So you were part of Cirque du Soleil. You were an act. I was a solo act on the stage. So every setup in every city meant there was a ton of students would come there, and they would set the chairs up, and there's 2,500 chairs, and I was up there in the air rehearsing, you know, like Superman, and picking which, you know, I hate to say it, but picking which victim. And I say that in the you know,
Right.
I'm not talking about, you know, forcing anybody,
Right.
but it was really false but I knew how to use people, places, and things. I knew that I could use this facade, which I wore makeup and I had a G-string on and had a Tarzan costume, and I knew they hadn't hired me for my looks or my brain cells, let's put it that way, because they said, yeah, that G-string's going to go on the outside of your costume. I went, okay. And they put diamonds on it was a little over the top. It worked, and I pulled it off, but it was this whole Roman Greek flying god mixed with Tarzan and this beautiful silver cube and 50 feet in the air and danger and accompaniment. And it wasn't really about me. It was all smoke and mirrors. Yeah. But I knew how to use it for that.
Yes, you knew how to use it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, you know.
So how'd you meet wife number 2? Was it wife number 2?
A very similar story.
Yeah.
I got to know her by how you described it. So then I came to Vegas and ended up in the Show Me Stare. You know, still single and still buzzing around, and I basically, wife number 2 was the PR in the show. So I would open the show.
Somebody you got to know.
I got to know. I opened the show up 6 minutes, went to her office and basically gossiped about all my, you know, conquests. Let's put it that way. And she would shake her head, and then a lady would walk past. I go, "Hi, Olga." And then I'd look at my, you know, second wife to be, and she'd go, "Oh my goodness." But, you know, and I said to her one day, I said, "So when are we going to get it on?" She went, "Oh no, I'm far too serious for you." But, you know, it ended up that way. Fantastic. She's still in my life now. Had 2 children who are grown, and that's why working on myself and being the best possible me is really, really important, because I believe, so my higher power is the universe, and karma is rolled in there, and I believe whatever I do, good, bad, indifferent, that there is a big reflection and an absorption into my children. Whether I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing,
They're
even if it's
watching you, they're around you.
Right, and even if they're not, and even if they're not,
Yeah.
And I
do
just
believe that because our consciousness is so connected.
Yeah.
I do believe that too. So
Yeah.
what happened in this relationship? Did you, what happened to make it go in a different direction?
in the end, it was the choices I made. Some wrong choices, which I don't want to discuss too much, just because I've got kids and I respect. But that was one of the reasons why I'm sat here now chatting to you, working on myself constantly, reaching out for help, different places, different groups, to constantly work on myself.
I do believe that because Ryan and I were talking about, it's like the attention, that energy. There's something in that. I certainly have an addiction to it.
It's the endorphins.
Yeah. In fact, even in a relationship, it could translate to a need to feel special. Like, if I feel like we're too comfortable, then there's a part of me that's like, just like, and that's why, for me, it's so important to be romantically and sexually compatible with my person, because it'll keep it fresh, and to be able to talk about it, to be able to say, hey, I mean, he knows I need to feel special, and I used to be ashamed of that. Like Ryan was talking about, being that, person that he felt like he needed to be so tight, and not really sharing what he really felt or really wanted. I felt like I was so embarrassed that I needed to feel special. Like, I was like, oh, who am I, a narcissist? Like, I need to feel special. And then finally I was just like, all right, I have all this recovery now. It behooves me to admit now I still want to feel special. I still do. And if you don't make me feel special, if I don't feel like I'm important to you, it's gonna weigh on me, and I'm gonna start to feel like I'm not in the relationship as much as I'd like to be.
I understand that, but you brought up a really important point, which is, what do I need in a relationship? What do I need in life? There's the basic functions that we have to eat and drink and sleep to survive, but there's a lot more emotional things that we need, and that is the difficulty. When you're in recovery and you're working on yourself, it's great, because you're constantly talking about that. But if your other partner isn't in recovery and doesn't understand it, it's a different language. I remember a friend of mine said to me, okay, if you want to work on yourself and you want to be in some sort of recovery to help whatever issues you've got, then it's basically like going to China, getting a Chinese passport and going and living in China. You don't speak the language.
Right.
That's how different you need to be.
It really is. They have to be working on themselves in some way. They have to be able to communicate. They have to be able to accept responsibility for their part. Otherwise, it's too off balance.
Well, if you're on different paths as well. But for me, it's been an amazing journey, because I really am. So people say, oh, how did you get into gymnastics? How did you? I was that naughty little kid that climbed trees and jumped downstairs. Look at me, watch this, watch that. What do you do with a kid like that? You stick him in the gym, or you stick him in the sport. And then if you get good at that sport, and I always say, I far exceeded the achievement than the talent that I have. And the reason for that, I had, and this comes with, the reason I'm saying it, because it comes from recovery, realising this, and I never knew, but I had a best friend that died in front of me on my birthday. Same name as me, Paul. He died of a huge heart attack, and he did gymnastics. So I didn't ever do the sport for myself. And I was just talking the other day, we were in a group situation, and we were talking, and I always said, with that situation, I'm surprised I didn't go off the deep end with drugs and alcohol and stuff. I've never been a drinker, tried every drug on the planet, all at the same time, all within like a short period of time, when I wasn't in a competition or I wasn't performing. I was the safe person that used stuff like that. And but I guess I did go off the deep end and drag attention and want these different experiences, because I was masking the pain of losing my friend. So I actually my career accelerated when it was on my 17th birthday. So I became then good at the sport. Then I grew a body because I was a skinny little kid till I was 16. Like I looked like an 11-year-old till I was 16, and there was a lot of shame as well involved in that. Body shame. I'd go to in the showers at school and want to stand in the corner because the same age guy was twice my size and built like that. It was very weird. It was really uncomfortable. And again, I'm talking about this now. I never knew that at the time. This is me going back. I call it my internal garbage, my internal kitchen garbage. I had to compartmentalize this, I'm not a useless little skinny kid, or your friend's not really died. It's just, but then the body came with it, then the success of the sport, then I would win, and then I would use all those things for
so
more and more attention.
All that
always,
attention was,
always.
It's kind of like what Brian was saying about needing to be heard. So he was like wanting attention and louder and whatever, and like, and so for you felt very unseen, and so now it was like this hit at it being seen, and I definitely identify with both of you for sure. We're nearing the end of this hour, and I love this conversation. But we have a few minutes left, so is there anything that you feel like you would really love to share, or let people know, men out there, anything in relationships or?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I do now and often is I don't have knee-jerk reactions to things. I was in a group and I remember being in that group and reading something and basically like, go apologise to everybody that you've ever hurt, and but it wasn't the time to do it. And I remember a gentleman in that room saying, "Hold on, stupid, sit down, do nothing." So I don't have those. I don't have to react now. I have what I call a piece of time because of some of the groups and people that I'm involved with, not to have those knee-jerk reactions. And then the other thing that I like to do is live, because obviously I've made mistakes and I've made bad choices over the years, is make an amends or living amends in those situations. Whether it's me driving down the street, somebody cuts me off, that doesn't mean blast on the horn, cut him off. It might be just open a door for somebody to go through a door. It might be pay somebody's lunch that I can see needs to be or not need to be. And I like that, and I like to do those kind of things, and I like my kids to see me do those kind of things. I also like to do the right thing and beyond the right thing for the mother of my children now, because I'm no longer with, we've been divorced 10 years. But still, some of the choices I made back then were not the right choices. So I'm in a position to be able to still be there. I like to
make up for it.
Yeah. And I like to, as regard my kids, I know that life's experiences are super important. So at one point, or probably up until a couple of years, I was enabling my kids. They can have whatever they want. Now I like to be known as the low-hanging safety net. So they can still crash and hurt themselves, but they can't burn and die. The net is there at the bottom. And then that way, I'm not robbing... That. Well, I'm not robbing them, and the easiest analogy I can give: if every time my daughter called me, "Dad, my tyres burst. What do I do?" "Oh, I'll be there. There's AAA. I'll be there." And then she's driving from Vegas to Cali, and she's no cell phone service at 120 degrees. She's forgotten a water bottle. She over at the side of the road, and she could die there, right? Because I've never shown her to change a tyre. So it's a really, I think it's a good analogy, but if I think through the number of experiences, and it's a conversation that I've had a lot with my ex-wife, we play good cop, bad cop. It's like, hey Dad, I've got a girlfriend, don't tell Mum, okay. He's got a girlfriend, but don't tell him I told you, click, okay, So we do that a lot, so we're there, we're probably both, her safety net is much higher than mine. Mine's really low hanging now.
Yeah.
Because as the wallet gets less. But those are the only things. I think it's really important to, and not be perfect either.
Yeah.
Not be perfect. To try the best that I can be at the particular time. And probably the most important thing I would say is be gentle with myself, because that did never in gymnastics, in performing. It was the opposite. You break your leg, you slash it, go back up and go again.
Wow.
Go do another crucifix. You've got a 20-pound cast on your leg now. So when that cast is off in 6 weeks, you've done enough crucifixes and you've got enough blisters on your hands, you're going to be like Superman. You know,
Wow.
it's horrendous. So when I came amongst these group, you know, and with recovery, it was fabulous. And gentle to me means this. It means when I'm hungry, have a little snack. When I'm tired, have a little nap. You know, when I'm lonely, call someone. And that is what it means to me.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us on the Real Recovery Show. I'm so glad you were able to join us. If you're interested in being on a future episode, please go to themeetingspace.com and click on the intake form and fill it out, or hit the contact form, or hit me up on the meeting on Facebook. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.